Hi everyone, I'm just at the minute getting some cabinets ready to be broken down to be sprayed. So I'm shooting in and fitting the drawer fronts to the drawer boxes, and I'm shooting the doors in and fitting the hinges. This kitchen's on traditional butt hinges, like 2.5 inch butt hinges, um, and I just thought it might be like an interesting video to just show you how I fit the butt hinges and then how I fit those doors to the cabinets. So all I'm going to do is I've got a unit in that needs an door. It's a sink unit. There's a false panel in the top here because there's an inset sink. I don't know if you can see on the video, but it's really all routed in the top. So you're never going to be able to use the top anyway because the inset sink comes to like 1.5 inches behind the front panel. But there's a door going to go on here. I've already shot the doors into their openings and sanded them. So literally all that's left to do now is to cut the butt hinges in and fit them to the cabinets. So I'll do this one as an example. I'm not going to do a voiceover or anything for this. I think I'll just talk through it as I'm doing it because there's nothing too noisy for too long that makes it awkward. So yeah, let's just get a door and I'll show you how I go about it. Right, so I've got just a shaker door for this cabinet. First thing I normally tend to do is just check that it does actually fit in the hole, because it's easy to sometimes pick up the wrong one, especially when you've got multiple doors the same size. And I obviously don't really want to be cutting hinges into the wrong side of a door. So I know this one's hung on the left, handle side's on the right. So I put it in the right orientation in here with the face looking at me and the hinge side up. It's really handy, this hospital bed, for this. Lots of different size doors you can bring to a nice comfortable height. Now, what I use to cut out the mortise for the hinge is a little jig. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'll try and walk you through it a little bit. So this is the size of the hinge leaf. If you can see from the inside edge of here to this edge here, this is your hinge leaf, or how far you want the leaf inset into the cabinet. So basically to halfway along the knuckle of the hinge. And this distance here and this distance here is the same as the distances here and here. So these are 60mm rails and stiles on these doors, and that's a 60mm gap. So if I put this on and butt it up flush with the end of the door, I know that the inside of that hinge is going to line up with the rail and stile on my door, which is how you want your doors doing. So I have different sizes of these for different size rails and stiles. The other thing that you might or might not be able to see is we have, I'm not sure if you can see, there's a little overhang here, a little lip here. I'll see if I can get something to sort of show where I mean, just here. And this here has got a drilling point just there. Now that is the center of the hinge on the frame, and that distance there is 1.7mm is what that pokes up, which is what my reveals are before paint on my cabinets. I do 1.7mm shot into 1.7, which is a 3.5mm gap all on two sides. So when you center it, it's actually 1.75 or whatever. But I shoot them with 3.5mm packers. Then by the time they're painted, that brings you down to about a 1.5mm reveal around your doors, which is what I generally typically aim for. So yeah, so this jig does both the cut in the mortise and then when pushed up on the door, locating the central screw hole for the hinges. So as you know, one jig does both parts, and it stops you getting mixed up if you've got multiple different size rails and stiles on a project, but sometimes I do. This just makes it nice and simple. So we'll get this set up now, and we'll get the actual hinges themselves routed in. So all we're doing, just making sure it's flush with the end. A couple of quick clamps just to hold it in place. And notice I'm flushing up the top of the hinge. Can you actually see that? Let's have a look. Yeah, you can. I'm flushing up the top of the front of the plate, not the top of this bit at the back, because that there would bring it 2mm or 1.5mm too far down. So once we've got that in, I've just got a super cheap palm router that gets used for nothing other than this one job. It doesn't get adjusted or anything. My depth on my cutter is adjusted to poke through the bottom of this bit of top material, the depth that I want the hinge in. So these hinges, these are Simon's work butt hinges, nice hinges, well made, solid brass. They're very consistent, which is the main reason I like them. I used to use a few others like Carlisle brass, but I just stick with these now. The entire stack height on these I think on this one it's 5.6. So I've used a little set of digital calipers and I've set that cutter to project through the bottom to leave me with 1.75 mil of that. So if it's 5.6, there's 3.9 mil depth of cut there, and that'll give me the right cutter projection. So now we've got them done. So this is like, I think 20 quid, this trim router. I put a little MDF base on it to give me a little bit more surface area. And that's the bulk of the waste hogged out on that one. Just do the same for this opposite side. And that's the bulk out. Now, you might notice these are quite deep hinge mortises, and that's because on cabinets, I double cut my hinges into the doors. So there's a hinge mortise on the door, but there isn't one on the frame of the cabinet. That's fairly standard practice in the UK for cabinets. I don't know whether other parts of the world tend to mortise in their cabinet hinges onto the frame and the door. Obviously, if I was making like a front door or any architectural doors, they'd obviously be mortised both sides, but for cabinets, this is what I do. There's a couple of advantages to that from a manufacturing standpoint. The main one being it gives you some adjustment on the door because you can drill your locations in the hinges to lift or lower the door a tiny bit. And it allows you some movement. Whereas if you mortise it on both sides, obviously wherever the door goes is where the door goes. So for me, I'm quite happy doing that. If you don't like doing that, then mortise them into the frame as well. But you can use the same jig if that's what you want to do. And then all I'm going to do is square up the corners from the router with a little chisel. I know a lot of people like corner chisels for this, but I just never find them particularly good. And I don't think they're really any quicker than just doing it with a sharp, normal chisel, really. I think they always want to wander slightly from the exact line of the cut, whereas with a little 3/4 inch or inch wide chisel, you can really just register against the wall of the cut that you've already made with your router and make sure you get really nice square corners, because it always looks a bit cack if they're a bit ropey. So that's the mortises now cut into the doors themselves. I mean, things I always double check before I start cutting is that the front of the doors there. It doesn't matter on some doors like these shaker ones, but if you had a door where you had a moulding profile, the last thing you want to do is accidentally machine your mortise into the back and then have to remake a door, or at worst do some kind of bodge to try and fill it, but you end up remaking them anyway. So I'm just taking off the sharp edge. Obviously these are being spray painted. I don't want any sharp arises on anything really, because it's just an area that's prone to get damaged by any knocks or dents in the paint. So we'll just take a little, this is just 220 grit or 240 grit, sorry. And this is the Merca Goldflex pads, which I like for little things like this, just nice and easy to get in. Now we'll get some hinges themselves. So these ones are Simon's work. These are actually in brushed nickel finish, which I haven't used in ages. Everything's been brass for a long time. But when you look at these hinges, you can see they've got 5 knuckles, which means one leaf has got 3 and one leaf has got 2. Traditionally, the one with fewer knuckles goes on the door itself, and the one with more to the frame, people say most to the post, and that, you know, most of them to the frame. So I'll just put that on the right way round. And these are self-centering bit, or if you're American, you call them Vicks bits, but here in the UK, we call them self-centering bits. And if you're using cheap hinges, it's probably a good idea to actually use the individual hinge that you're going to use at each location and drill for that, because the hole spacing is quite inconsistent on some of the cheap hinges. On these Simon Works ones, you can get a set of calipers, go for a full box of these, and they're all within, you know, 0.1, 0.15 of a millimetre. So it's good enough that you can use one hinge to do all of your locations and not have to worry about not mixing them up. Now what I'm going to do now is drill these holes down to full depth, which in this case is going to be about 45 mil. And the reason I'm drilling these so deep is because this is a hydrofugo door, not a solid wood door. And so I'll use a 3.5 by 40 screw into the door to get a better grip. I know some people don't like putting butt hinges into hydrofugo or MDF doors in general. I mean, I wouldn't do it as cheap MDF into the better quality like the Medite or the Optima or the hydrofugo, providing that you do a good pre-drill of the right size and you're using good length screws, then you won't have any problems. And I've literally done hundreds of cabinet doors like this, never had a single one that's had an issue. So, you know, I'm basing it purely on my experience, but I certainly have no issue in doing it. And, you know, I don't think there's really a problem if other people want to do that as well. I mean, you get to the point, most doors, you'll damage the door before you manage to pull these hinges out, really. So the thing with it is just having the right screws and the right pre-drill. So these screws here, because these are coming back off the spray, and I'm just going to stick these Spats ones in, which are the wrong colour, they're gold, but we'll change that when we put the doors on properly afterwards. They're just for now. So that's the hinges on the actual door itself. What I'll do is I'll move the camera down so you can see what's going on with the jig down here. I'm not going to do any editing on this video, I'm just going to paste the bits together, but at least it'll give you a better view. Right then, hopefully you can see that okay. So this is the side that the door's getting hinged on the left-hand side, handle side's on the right. And this is that same jig we were using before. And it hopefully, I don't know if you can see a bit better really, overhang on the top. So the distance from there to there is the distance gap you'll get if you use that to register your door. So I push this up. I've got a 3mm drill bit, long one. And all I'm going to do is just buzz that in 5mm or so. I'm not looking at piloting the whole thing. I'm just giving it a location spot for that first screw to go into. And the reason it's quite a large 3mm, even though they're only a 3.5 screw, is it really makes sure that you centre on it well. Then we've got the door. See the door there. Open these leaves up for the hinges. And when we put this on, there's a good chance it's not going to be perfectly lined up immediately. It should be good front to back, but it might not be perfect top to bottom. And that's the advantage of double cutting your hinges on the cabinet door side, is if this one doesn't line up, I can show you how you can adjust it. So I'm just going to get that top one. I'm not doing it right up, I'm just getting it pinned so it takes the weight of the door a little bit for me. Obviously base unit ones like this aren't so bad, but when you're doing the big larder units, it's a bit awkward by yourself. And then do these up. Now hopefully the gap looks good, but as we can see, we're catching a bit on the bottom now. It doesn't help that the cabinet's not level. So we're a little bit low, and we can rectify that relatively easily. So you can see hopefully in there that we've only drilled that middle hole. So because we haven't touched the other holes yet, we've still got the option of making some adjustments on them. So what I'm going to do is get some more screws. The door wants to come up, so the easiest way for us to lift that is I will do a pilot hole right at the very top centre of the top hole. Here's one. And there's two. Now I'm not going to completely undo the other hinges, the other screws. I'm just going to loosen them up enough that there's a little bit of slack in the pins, a little bit of slack on the hinges. I'm just going to line up my screws with line up my screws with the new holes that I've made. Just screw them in just enough that they're taking the weight of the door. Now once the top one's in, that one can come out. Once that one's in, that one can come out. Then we can lift the door, screw in those ones that we've already screwed. Check our opening, just need to move the camera back. And that's brought us to a nicer gap at the top there. And then we can do up the screws in the other holes. do need to move anything backwards or forwards or up or down a little bit more, you've still got another hole that you can do that. So it gives you two shots basically at making your adjustments. Once you've done up the screws in the holes where put it in the right spot, you can then put screws from the hole to the other, and it shouldn't really move too much. Should be okay at that point. So there we go. That should be that in. And now we'll just get the self-centering bit and drill out the others. And that's that door hung, well gapped. So it's a little bit of a taper at the top there at the minute. That's because the cabinet's not leveled up. If we were to lift this front leg a little bit, that'll come right. But I don't generally bother leveling them for hanging the hinges. I just check the gaps on the hinge side, because it's just a waste of time. You spend a lot of time leveling up cabinets and take them apart. But as long as your gaps are good here and here, and as long as your cabinets are square when they go together, that's going to be good. So yeah, hopefully that's some help. See if we can. Oh, crikey, getting too old to get up and down. There you go. You can see the door hung there. Hopefully that's some help. So not be a very well edited video, I'm afraid, but I'm busy at the minute, and I just thought doing something's better than doing nothing. So I just sort of put this together quickly, and hopefully it's useful to someone who's looking on the internet one day, trying to sort out a faster way of doing their butt hinges. So yeah, have a nice weekend, and thanks very much.